and share with you my presentation. My computer's thinking about it. All right. That beautiful lady that you see there on the screen is my mom, Beverly Carter. And although her side of the family is originally up from where you are, she found herself in the South, and she met my dad. And so we all live down in Arkansas now. And for those of you that may not know where Arkansas is, we are down by Texas. Most people as I travel, they're like, where in the world is that place? But surprisingly enough, we all have our teeth and we wear shoes down here, I promise, or most of us do anyway. But my sweet mom was a real estate agent. I got into the business, as did my brother, after we lost our mom. So we were raised with a mom that was a successful agent, and she got into real estate later in our lives. And she was one of those agents that just kind of makes you sick. She made it look really easy. You know, tragically, awfully, there were two really bad people, a husband and a wife, that perceived my mom to be rich, and they thought that they could get a lot of money from my mom. These bad people were literally quoted as it was a husband and wife, and they were quoted as saying that they perceived her to be so rich that they would never have to work again. And I will just let you know, from me to you, that's not the story with our family. Although my mom had a good bit of success with real estate, she still lived like many of us, commission to commission. I'd like to start by telling you just a little bit about her personally. I know I've already made the connection of family up there where you are. But she, at the time that she was taken, there on the left was her 50th birthday party. So where that photo was taken, that's my dad. She had been married to him for almost 34 years. She was a mom to 3 boys, and I always joke that if it's possible to be pissed in heaven, my mom is totally mad that I am showing people all over the world that 80s hairdo. And then, of course, can't mention my mom without mentioning her favorite role, which was being grandma. So I have 3 kiddos, and so it's definitely left a void in our life. Those of you that are watching today that are parents, it's our worst nightmare that someone would take one of our children, and we're always looking after our kids to prevent that from happening. But you don't think about the possibility that someone could kidnap you, or that someone could kidnap your parent. It's just not even on the radar, or it wasn't for me anyway. We know, limited things about why my mom was targeted. And tragically, and it's the reason why I tell this story, the reason why my mom was targeted applies to every single one of us on this Zoom today. And that is, and this is from the bad guys, which is what I call them, forgive my kindergarten terminology, but I either call them bad guys or I call them far, far worse. But the bad guys were when asked repeatedly, whether in the trial, or not necessarily in a trial, but during hearings or interviews that they did with the media, why Beverly? Why did you do this? Why did you kidnap her? Why did you think that you could get money from her and her family? And it all kept coming back to the fact that she was perceived to be rich and that she worked alone. And I want to talk to you about that perception of wealth because it applies to you. Regardless of what's in your checking account right now, regardless of how hard hit, perhaps you've been by this crazy environment that we're all living through right now. My mom's wealth, as they knew it, was perceived through what they knew about her through her real estate marketing. When the detectives kind of honed in that, these are the bad people, and they got a search warrant and went into their home, and they got the laptop of these bad people, evidence was found on their laptop that they had done searches on my mom. So they had gone through Google searches, which would have, you know, of course, now you can't search Beverly Carter without getting all the crime information, but imagine Google yourself and see your online presence probably is 95% your real estate business. And then also they had gone, there was evidence on their laptop, they had gone to my mom's Facebook profile and they had dug around in it. And, you know, I don't know about you, but mine, for my real estate career and for my platform with safety and just trying to be an active community member, my Facebook profile is public. And so, you know, most real estate agents are. Those agents, you know, with extreme diligence, keep a, you know, a very private personal page and then also a public real estate page. But, you know, it's a lot to keep up with. Kudos to them. And then others, like me, I try to be mindful of, you know, I have a public profile, but, you know, if it's a family photo or maybe I'm on vacation and it's giving the perception that maybe I'm rich or that I'm out of town, you know, I try to lock those photos down. But back to my mom, evidence was found that they had Googled her, gone through her Facebook profile, and they had, and this is really eerie, they had used a tool that we use all of the time in conducting real estate research, and that was they went to county record and they did searches on my mom's name. They found out where my mom lived, and not so that they could, the only purpose for them doing that, we later found, was that they could just determine the property value of the home that my mom lived in. And so just those three things alone gave them this perception of wealth. Now, it coupled with the fact that she's a real estate agent. These thugs, these bad people, they wanted a person that worked alone in a profession that makes a ton of cash. And so they had done some research, and the evidence was found as they were researching what industry, what kind of super rich people work alone. They had literally done those types of, that kind of research. And, you know, we all roll our eyes because we're like, good grief, couldn't they know that these types of searches would also, you know, be easily found? But real estate wasn't their first choice. And anyway, but they eventually honed in. And isn't it, you know, kind of the way that regardless of how many transactions we've conducted, you know, I'll tell on myself, real estate's not my primary gig. I've had a job that I've had since I was 17 at an insurance company. And so I only did 3 transactions last year. But the fact that I'm a realtor, and that alone, just being a realtor just makes people have the perception that I'm mega rich. So that's kind of the tough part of my mom's story, is that what made her a target can just as easily make any of us a target. I have this photo and the description really here intentionally because, you know, how often do we see the, you know, a pretty picture of a house and a property description? But this one's different. Although it was just another appointment, this was no ordinary appointment. This was the showing where my mom would be kidnapped. This is the showing where my mom would lose her freedom, and that would ultimately take her from us. If I may, I'd like to just briefly give you the history on what led my mom from the first introduction leading up to this appointment, because I think that the reason why I tell my mom's story is because it's so teachable. I think many of us, while we can learn from my mom, we can easily see that we could have found ourselves in the exact same situation. If you'll give me just one moment, I have a 6-year-old playing Beyblades that is going to get destructive here in just a moment. I'm so sorry.
No need to apologize, Carl. That is, that's the way it is in May 2020.
It is. I had him go to his room so he wouldn't hear this story because it's too much for a 6-year-old, but he is making racket from across the house. But imagine with me that today you begin getting calls, text, and emails. So 3 different mediums of communication from new clients. And they tell you that they are moving in from out of state, they're relocating due to work, and they're cash buyers. They're in a temporary housing situation, but they really want to get into their own home quickly as possible. It really sounds like a dream come true. You're talking, as you talk with them, you are talking, texting, and emailing with both husband and wife, having conversations with both. The phone number that they are calling you from matches the state, or the area code matches the state that they say that they're moving in from. The email address that they're using matches the fictitious names that they're giving you, or matches the names they're giving you. You don't know necessarily that they're fictitious. So at this point, it sounds like a pretty good gig, right? This is going to be a quick deal. What they're looking for in a home was really nothing outlandish. They did want a little bit more yard, but they just, they wanted a 3-2 and as quickly as possible. My mom began her search. Of course, she went into the, like every business transaction ever. She goes into the MLS and she sets them up with this fictitious email. Well, it's a real email address with the fictitious names. And she has, the MLS emailing them as new properties hit the market. She's not finding anything that suits really what they're looking for. They're just not interested in quite seeing any of the houses that she sent along yet. So she does even more. So my mom starts talking up this couple. So imagine yourself in this situation, especially with the environment that we've been in, with inventory being so low, that she starts talking it up with other agents in the office. Hey, I've got these clients and we really need to try to find them a property. Here's what they're looking for. And really, as an aside, good safety tips in letting other people know what you're working with, who you're working with. Imagine, being a detective working this case, because they almost had to interview every single agent at my mom's brokerage, because my mom was trying so hard to serve this couple and to get them into a property that she's really, really talked to a lot of people about them and tried to find them a property. Alternatively, and just like your spouses, and I'm sure it's even worse now under quarantine, but my dad was very familiar with this situation, with this and everything that I've just told you. But let me tell you the other side. My mom wasn't aware of the deception. She was really only aware of the opportunity that was seemingly being presented. She had no idea that these people weren't who they said they were. She had no idea that the husband on the other end of this was a 7-time felon. She had no idea that the names that were given were wrong. She had no idea that the phone number that had been given was not a real number at all. It was a spoof number. And so you have to think back. My mom's been gone for over 5 years. And so the environment that we were in late 2014, we hadn't yet started to be plagued by the telemarketers and solicitors that get us from with these fake local numbers. That hadn't yet started then, becoming a phenomenon yet. Or I say a phenomenon like that's a good thing. So you could see how back then maybe that would have been a little bit more deceptive than now. I think we're all a little leery of phone numbers being used in any way to identify a person now. But literally everything, while they had used this app that is probably obsolete by this point, this app that the name of it was Text Me. And it allowed the bad guys to route their phone number through a spoof number, giving the illusion that they were from out of state, when in fact they were from across town, and they were always from across town, watching my mom and plotting to get her alone so that they could kidnap her and they could hold her for ransom. Another thing that I didn't tell you about, which could be implied from their internet searches, is that they had to make sure that the person that they kidnapped had a spouse, because they needed someone to deliver the money, to deliver the ransom. I'll tell you a little about their plan, and I know many of you, if you're like me, it's like even as I tell this story, and I've told it many, many times, we're just like, how in the world do these people think they could get away with this? How did did they not ever seen any movie ever made about ransom? And they had a plan that they thought took a ransom beyond like the movie level. So, they had a sophisticated way. So what they were going to do is one of those past felonies that the husband had committed was that he was the server at a restaurant. If you remember what it's like to go and eat in a restaurant these days, God, I miss it. But he was a server at a restaurant that you never want to get, because as you're there with your family or friends, you're enjoying a meal, using your hard-earned money to pay. He is waiting to get your credit card at the end of that meal, and as soon as you hand it over, he takes it to the back, and with one swipe of through his skimmer, has all of your card's information, and then you start getting fraudulent charges, and you don't understand why or how someone was able to get all of your card info. Oddly, strangely, coincidentally enough, bad guy had gotten his hands on another skimmer after getting out of prison for other things. And his master plan was to kidnap my mom, have my dad, in order to collect the ransom. It wouldn't be like a movie where you get, a briefcase of cash at the town square. Alternatively, he wanted my dad to push all of this perceived wealth onto or to accounts that were accessible via my mom's cards in my mom's purse. I'll come back to that. Now, let me tell you about this particular property. I know it looks like a nice house, right? This is one of those photos where the exterior can be quite deceiving. And the photo was taken long before. And so let me tell you a little bit about it. This is a bank-owned foreclosed property. It at this point had been sitting for years. There had been issues of squatters. There had been issues where yucky people had gotten inside and ripped everything of value. I'm talking the fixtures all the way down to the copper wiring. So it would take thousands upon thousands and weeks upon weeks to get this house back livable. Landscaping a complete mess. Sits on, although it sounds nice, right? It's a country setting property, oversized lot, sitting right on the lake, 3-car garage. Sounds fantastic, but this is not ideal for people that are looking for something immediately. Move-in ready. Other things about this particular house is that my mom knew the condition it was in. She knew all the bad. My mom lived in this community. My mom lived around the bend on this same lake. Just 3 doors down from this particular house is where my mom's pastor of her church lived. And, at the risk of sounding cheeky, and, I know this may make you groan, it makes me groan to say it, but truly, this is, with the exception of the horrid mosquitoes that we have down here, this is truly a heavenly little community. The streets out here are canopied by old trees. Neighbors literally have been quoted that, as all of this crime occurred, that they didn't even lock their doors. And I know it sounds like every Dateline episode ever, but truly. And so when my mom would have never recommended this particular property. So imagine what her thought must have been when the bad guys called her and said, we want to see that house. Now, she had some educating to do to them because this house had a terrible online presence. It had this photo as the front, main photo, presenting photo on Zillow, and it was followed by 4 very dark, very awful photos taken by like the first flip phone ever made. I mean, awful photos. So you really, in fairness to a client that might have reached out about this house, by internet photos alone, they wouldn't know the state it was in. However, something happened because it was the husband that called my mom and said, we would like to see this property. Whether it was knowing that seeing this property would be a waste of my mom's time and the client, or maybe, just maybe, there was that gut, that instinct, spidey sense, God, however you identify with that burning sensation in your stomach that something is not maybe quite right on this call. But we know that this request came in through a call. We know this from the bad guy himself. He said that when he called my mom to ask to see this house, that she pushed back. And in that phone call, my mom did something really, I think, wise, and I hope that you will feel empowered to do this as well if you ever find yourself in a tough spot and maybe at a loss of words, is that to come back, against this request from this husband to see this property, she made up a company policy on the spot. She said, I'm so sorry, but company policy prohibits me from showing property alone in a rural area, which is pretty smart, pretty clever, kind of puts the blame on the broker, like, oh, I'm sorry, I would, but, can't. Quick thinking, smart, great. We can learn from that. However, what my mom didn't anticipate, and how many of us would, what do you do then when husband hands the phone to wife and the wife says, hey, girl, I'm going to be there too. Would your company be okay with that? And I think this is really where the story starts getting, I think, close to home for a lot of agents. This is when we're in a room together where agents start looking around because they realize, oh man, a wife's involved. The wife was the part of the ask to see the property. I do that all the time. And so the story, as this wife, and keep in mind, it was the wife that also tricked my mom. It was the wife that was very familiar, very friendly with my mom. She told my mom, hey girl, if I'll have to come meet you guys straight from work, so we'll all be driving our own cars. If we all 3 meet there, would your company be okay with that? And so my mom agrees. My mom says, absolutely. But I must warn you, this house has some issues. It has no utilities. We'll have to set the appointment no later than 6 o'clock, which is another good safety tip, right? We show our properties in the daylight wherever possible. And so fast forward to the actual day of, my sweet mom had gone to, I know that just from my memory, it was a gorgeous day, late September, where, you're finally getting a reprieve from the hot summer. My mom had an affiliate lunch that she had gone to that day. My mom, just to tell you just very frankly and very transparently what life was like for her then is, and this is what concerns me about the environment that we're in with this virus, is that I hope and pray that this story, and I will get on Zooms from sun up to sundown, if we can keep agents making smart choices about their personal safety when we get back full speed ahead to work. Because my mom, although she hadn't been impacted by the virus, my mom, her work and her commission checks had been impacted by a surgery. And so my mom was undoubtedly feeling the pressure of these bills that we've got to pay. So my mom had been at an affiliate luncheon that day, and she won $50. And she was excited about winning the $50. So she calls my dad, and you think of this conversation, because you've had it with your partner like a million times, I'm sure, is you call them, you check in middle of the day, and you say, hey, this is what the rest of my day looks like, and which is a good safety tip, I should add. And so she says, I'm going, that couple that's moving in from out of state, I'm going to show them that house, that empty house around the lake. I'm going to show that to them. And then I won $50 today, so I'm going to pick up some Mexican food from our favorite place for dinner, and then I'll be home. And so, it was a Thursday like any other Thursday, but a good one. This is great. I don't know about you, but these days I am missing Mexican food. My mom gets to this property early. Now, another thing we can learn from my mom about good professionalism, safe practices: get there early, scout things out, especially when you know there have been a history of squatters and that things are a mess. We know that my mom had checked out the property and unlocked the property prior to the bad guy getting there. But at 6 o'clock, and I'll tell this part very deliberately, very intentionally, a black car pulls to the driveway, parks next to my mom. A Caucasian male with short, dark hair gets out of the car. And I'm going to pause those details, and I'll come back to them. As he approaches my mom, and I know you didn't know my mom, but if you remember her face, and maybe you've seen her face before, she had a smile that could light up a room. Her voice was very sweet and very Southern. And I know that this bad person, that she had no idea was bad. She had no idea that everything she'd been told was a lie. I know she greeted him with such warmth. I should say, because I haven't really, it was implied, but just to make the point, meeting this couple at this property would be the first time to see this couple face to face, although this communication had been happening over almost 2 weeks leading up to this first meeting, this first showing. She had no idea that they weren't who they said they were. There had been no exchange of identification. And so as he approaches my mom in that driveway, he is apologizing. And he says, I'm so sorry, but my wife has gotten caught up at work. And she's not going to be able to join us. And would you mind just going ahead and showing us this property? Sorry. And because there are such few horrible photos of this property online, would you mind, as you walk through this house with me, will you take photos and text them to my wife and answer any questions that my wife may have about this property? And so we know just from some phone records that around that same time, maybe before, maybe right after, the wife begins texting my mom. And her story is the same. She's sorry. She got caught up at work. Will my mom please walk through the property with the husband? Will my mom please take these photographs and answer any questions? And so my mom's in a tight spot. I don't know about you, but like every time I tell this story, this is the moment that I wish so badly for my mom that I could make a different decision for her. This is the point of the story when no matter how many times I tell this story, and sorry, I get emotional, that burning in my stomach hits, because this is the last decision. This is the last opportunity to get to safety. And I know, just because I'm human, and I think we all know, in that moment of my mom being given this change of plan, that she was faced with, do I proceed, do I not, that we know her gut was on fire from that instinct. But my precious, sweet mom, sweet mom, she chose to show the property and to serve, to help. And I'm sorry. The investigators, I told you earlier that they had found the laptop, the bad guys, and they had gone through it. But also within the bad guy's house, they had they found my mom's cell phone. And after the trial, we got my mom's cell phone back. Of course, it had been evidence in the trial, and sure enough, the last 10 photos on my mom's phone were of the interior of this house, where she was doing just that. She was taking photos and she was texting them to the wife. And you may, the entire time, all this time we've spent on this slide, you may have wondered why there's this awkward photo of this bedroom closet there on the screen. That photo was taken by my mom herself. That photo represents the very last moment of my mom's freedom. You hear about, these safety instructors, and it's so easy to get dismissive, and y'all, trust me, I get it. Before this happened to my mom, if somebody would just sit me down for safety training, I'd be like, oh, please save it. But you hear people say the importance of not letting someone get behind you. And this is really the only smart thing I think that the bad guys really did, because this plan of having my mom take photos, and it made sense to take the photos because of the online presence. It kept my mom in the game, in the showing, and it also kept my mom distracted. As my mom turned, or as she was taking this photo, she was met with a taser in her side. The bad guy has been very proud to admit that the last words that my mom heard of her freedom were, "You're about to have a very bad day." And my mom was met with lime green duct tape, just like this, that I'm holding up. I don't know about you, if you have kids, young kids, our kids use this colored duct tape now for craft time, and there really should be no other purpose, right? That bad guy took this tape and bound my mom's ankles, bound her wrist behind her back, this entirely around her head over her mouth, and entirely around her head over her eyes. Before I show you this, I am so sorry, y'all. I guess quarantine and then telling my mom's story, Lord. Bad guy. Then, so if you look at this house, the front door is right behind that big bush. And so do you remember the detail, that specificity that I gave you about it? 6 o'clock, black car pulls up, young Caucasian male, short dark hair, gets out, greets my mom. Here's the rest of that. Moments later, after they both enter the house, he exits the house, gets in his car, backs it up to this property, so to the front door, opens the trunk and goes back inside. The reason why I give you all those details, and this goes beyond my mom, this goes beyond real estate. Tonight, as you're having your meals with your family, I hope that you will share this part of the story. Every bit of those details were witnessed firsthand by the next door neighbor. And I tell you that because I hope that you will encourage, especially with all of us spending more time at home, the risk of us seeing something or something happening while we're at home are certainly greater. But we've seen the billboards, we've seen the commercials for if you see something, say something. I hope that you will think harder about that campaign now and think about my mom's situation. Unfortunately, my mom's situation, it wasn't until way late into that night that detectives are door knocking house by house, that they knock on that neighbor's door, and the neighbor says, well, yeah, I did see everything I just told you. That's when it came out, about 5 hours too late. I don't know that it could have saved my mom, but perhaps it could have cut down our response time, which could have saved her. I don't know. Y'all, and I don't say this for dramatics, but maybe I do if I'm being honest, but before this happened to my mom, I'll admit that I saw movies, I saw episodes of Law and Order where you see actors being put in the trunk of a car and you don't really think about it. Or maybe they break free, or maybe, and you see their struggle. You don't think about that being you. You don't think about that being your mama. And I know, especially for us boys, there's just, and this coming up on Mother's Day weekend, we love our mamas. And I wrestle with, and I'm haunted by the fact that my mom was put in the trunk of a car. I wrestle with the fact that this bad guy was so horrible that before he closed the lid of the trunk of that car, that he pulls out his cell phone and he took a picture of my mom in the trunk of that car and he texted it to his own wife. We assume that he did that to let the wife know that this master plan of kidnapping this rich realtor was in play. The plan was from here to take my mom and make her do a video. It would be through video delivered to my dad via that spoof number. So via text, these ransom demands would come. So moments after being kidnapped, they had my mom, took her to another area and made her do a video. And the plan fell apart before they were able to shoot anymore. So imagine my dad. He knew that my mom's appointment was at 6. He knew that after that appointment, she was going to get food and bring it home. He finally calls me around 8:30 and says, son, I am worried about your mom. She's not replying to my phone calls or my text. And, y'all, I'll be honest with you. I did like probably many of your kids would do. I'm on the other end of the phone, dude, I mean, we know how real estate works. Like, no news is like great news. She is probably writing a contract, or maybe, you know, they brought in family or someone, you know, they're doing another showing, or, you know, leave her alone. But I could hear, and it was it was unlike my dad to have that worry in his voice. And so I told him, I said, well, Dad, why don't you go to that property she said she was going to show? I'll get around, and I live close to where my mom's real estate office was. I'll go up to her real estate office, see if she's there. This will be over. My dad arrived. We both arrived to our destinations around the same time, and he said, son, your mom's car's here, and her purse is inside, and a folder is in the passenger seat, but your mom's not here. And we knew enough about, you know, we knew just kind of baseline realtor safety for everyone, you know, that just one of my mom's hard rules is that she just never got in the car with other people. She, you know, she let clients into her car, but she would never let them. And not only just for safety, but she just didn't think it set a professional tone. And so we're like, she wouldn't get in the car with someone else. And then by this point, it's after 9 o'clock, and we haven't heard from her. And then also we knew from safety reasons that Mom would always never tour property with a purse on her shoulder. She would leave it locked in the car, and she did, and it was still there. Yet if she had really befriended this couple and decided to ride with them on to look at another property really quickly, it just seemed odd that she would leave her folder that had all the details about those clients in her passenger seat and her purse behind. And I'll pause there and just to say that you'll remember how they planned to get this money from my dad. Push all the wealth to accounts accessible via cards in my mom's purse. So from the moment he drove off with my mom in the trunk of that car, the plan was already ruined. So of course we called the police. One comes, second shows up, third shows up. There's that underlying awkwardness because you and we know how this works. We've seen the Dateline episodes, you know, a couple that's been married for 34 years, suddenly a spouse goes missing, and the remaining spouse knows exactly where to go look. Like, you know, we're combating the awkwardness of that no one ever came out and said it, but that unspoken, the police must think Dad did this. And, you know, on it goes. And you should, you know, if you can imagine your family in the same scenario, your family trying to pull together every bit of real estate knowledge that you've given them, because I know real estate, I know you, even though I don't know you, and I know that you probably talk about real estate a lot. And I know that they have picked up on things that you're not even aware of. And so we were huddled, and for the longest, and we're just replaying what we know about real estate that makes Mom okay. You know, what scenario with the phone dead, but yet it's still important enough, but the later it got, you couldn't really do that anymore. I mean, there's only so much Pollyanna, you can cling to, and you got to get real at some point. And so you'll notice this screenshot here on the PowerPoint. This is a shot of a text exchange from my mom to my dad. And so my dad had left this long string of, hey, Bev, you okay? Just checking in, all these types of things, as any of us would. Finally, so remember that appointment was at 6 p.m. on Thursday. Finally, over 6 hours later, we're all standing around. Remember, this is one of those early fall nights. It had gotten, quite cold. or at least for the South anyway. You guys know a whole different type of cold up there. But Dad begins yelling, cops are running, and everyone is swarming my dad's truck at this point because Dad begins getting text messages from Mom. And so she's finally replying. She's like, yes. Sorry, phone's been dead. And I will tell you, these didn't just come in like boom, boom, boom. It was just like, probably maybe, a minute or something apart. And so as we're, excited and we're like, and so relieved that she's okay. And then secretly, I'm kind of like embarrassed because I'm like, oh my gosh, like there were no less than, 8 to 10, cop cars out there. And of course the whole neighborhood's lit up in blue and all the neighbors are out. And then the third text that you see there comes in. And I know you don't know my mom, but just to let you know, her favorite food was chocolate cake and her favorite drink was chocolate milk. She was very sweet, very Southern, and did not think it was very becoming to be out drinking. That's just not who my mom was. And so we went from elated, relieved, maybe a touch embarrassed, to completely terrified. That last, where this whole thread was meant to throw us off and make us think that she was okay, all it did was 100% confirm that someone had her phone and they were pretending to be her. And so I'll tell you what happened just moments before these texts came through that we had no idea of. So the detectives had set up roadblocks, and so they were in the area, and so they were stopping everybody and saying, hey, a local real estate agent has disappeared. Do you know anything? Have you seen anything? And so just right up the road, within eyesight, they had just stopped a car. I remember seeing it. And this person was questioned, hey, real estate person's gone. Have you seen anything? Do you know anything? Person denied knowing anything and left. None of us had any clue that was the bad guy himself coming back to the scene of the crime to get my mom's purse, because you'll remember they needed the purse in order to get the money. It wasn't until they had gotten my mom back to their home, they had locked my mom in their master bathroom as their prisoner. And it was then that they had the realization that we don't have the purse. And, how are we going to do this? And so he's like, well, no one's going to be able to, no one even knows she's missing yet. And they're not even going to know where to look. I'll just go back and get the purse. He took my mom's car keys and out he went. He left my mom locked in that master bathroom with the wife standing guard at the door with a firearm while he went back out to get the purse. But much to his surprise, my mom had told my dad where she would be, showing property. And so as the bad guy approached, of course, he's questioned by the cops. He leaves the scene, grabs my mom's phone, and begins trying to throw everybody off. I'll tell you another thing that happened in that exact moment is that he did like so many criminals do. They think they have the best, the brightest plan. It will not fail. This time, literally, we're going to be rich enough, we'll never have to work again. But then they see a crack or a flaw in their plan. They see blue lights, and they make the most rash decisions to keep from having to go back to prison. So instead of kidnapping and the ransom charges, it was worth risking a murder charge if they could hide it and pretend like it never happened. This timeline represents really what felt like an eternity. This was the total time that my mom was missing. We did things that seem ridiculous, but were quite effective. Did these hashtags and the only thing that I look back on this time with fondness of has to do with the real estate community. I know that my mom's cousin, it's my mom's first cousin, April, that lives and was, very active in real estate up in your area. Probably many of you were probably aware, or agents in your area were aware of my mom's situation and reached out to our family and prayed for our family. It was during this time, and over on the picture there that you see on the right, those are soybean fields that are located out by where Mom was taken. And these fields, if you can imagine, hundreds of people walking these fields. And if you've ever been out in farmland like this, it's lowland, it's murky, swampy, rodents, snakes, I mean, gross. We got into real estate. We didn't get into farming. But I'll tell you who filled those fields. It was real estate agents, linked arm in arm. And I'll tell you, down here in the South, we believe that, the higher they are, the closer to God. You see all these beautiful real estate agents with this big hair out in these fields and probably scared to death. And I will never, ever forget that. So I just wanted to share that little uplifting moment, because I know things can get tough and they can get tense as we conduct our transactions sometimes. But when we need to come together, by George, whether it's a virus or a hurricane or wildfires or a missing person, we come together in a mighty way. And I will be forever grateful. It was actually through Facebook and real estate agents that I found out on the early morning of September 30th that my mom's body had been found. I know that's both good and bad. It makes you groan, right? I remember seeing that when Kobe Bryant accident happened, that his wife found out through the media as well, and I can certainly empathize with how awful that feels. I'm thankful that law enforcement was at least able to get to my dad and tell him before he found out in another way. You'll recognize this dress from the first time that first slide about my mom. This was Mom's 50th birthday party. She was 50 when she was taken from us. That guy on the right there is my brother. The guy on the left is my dad. I'm named after my dad. And I'd like to share with you, it was the words that my mom spoke in that burst of what would have been a series of videos demanding the money from my dad. I'd like to share with you the words that she said to my dad in that video. The video was never delivered to my dad, but it was later played during the interrogation process as kind of a bargaining chip that didn't work. But the words my mom said to my dad were, "Hey, Carl, it's me. Just want to let you know I'm okay. I haven't been hurt. Just do what he says and don't call the cops. If you call the cops, it could get bad. I just want you to know I love you very much." And while there's a very sad part of that recording that we can focus on, we could focus on the fact that my dad still struggles to this day with the guilt of calling the cops and saying, "I wouldn't have called the cops if I knew your mom didn't want me to call the cops," and living with that type of horror that he shouldn't carry. But what I choose to focus on were those last words that my mom spoke to my dad, just moments after being kidnapped, moments after just coming freshly after being tased and pulled out of a trunk. She, in her last words to him, wanted him to know how loved he was. I'll say also, to the point of coming out of that trunk, evidence was later found when that trunk was searched by detectives. The tape that had been around her hands was left in that trunk, which means she got her hands free, so she was fighting. This is the spot where my sweet mom was found. The bad guys that night after he realized that the police were on the scene, they wouldn't be able to get the purse. This plan wasn't going to work. They just made this decision, this jump to let's take everything that this realtor has on her and then end her life. And so she had that $50 that I told you about that she won in her pocket. They took that. They took her jewelry, including her wedding ring. And disgustingly enough, and I guess it's how you're able to do a crime like this, is that you have this awful ability to dehumanize a person. They even took some of the articles of clothing that my mom was wearing. The wife liked my mom's shirt, and so they took my mom's shirt, and it was found hanging in the wife's closet. Just awful, awful people, and I know that you get it, and I kind of keep making the point of how awful they are, but they brought my mom here, and to spare you more of my emotion, I will just tell you quickly that they took that same tape that she'd been abducted with and continued to apply it to her face until she could no longer breathe. Video surveillance was found at a local retail store where they went to buy shovels, and they came back and they dug a shallow grave. Through amazing detective work, and I have to say, and this is no smoke, through the pressure applied by realtors across the globe, it kept enough pressure on the search process and then later the justice process. She was found in the most incredible way, and she was justice as good as we could hope for was carried out. We went to trial, and the wife took a plea deal. So in exchange for her truthful testimony against her husband, she received 30 years with the possibility of parole in 21 years, just about 18, 19 years from now. She has recently filed for clemency, and so I am getting letters from people to, and the box that I have of letters, not surprising, is full of a lot of real estate agents, so that they're disagreeing with her clemency request. So the husband, real piece of work, really continues to victimize our family. He got a he got a life sentence for capital murder, and then another life sentence for kidnapping. And so he will never see the light of day, but it doesn't keep him from tying up the court system. So he has been back, and he has sued the interrogators for being too rough, the prison guards for being too rough, appealed my mom's case to the Arkansas Supreme Court, and most recently he's trying to catch a federal charge by identifying who knew you could do this? Identify and write letters to African-American federal judges across the United States, threatening their lives in hope of catching a federal charge. So I roll my eyes, and I'm glad that he at least cannot cause physical harm to people. I know that I have really talked your ear off. I will wrap this up. Let's just, quickly just hit on just the things that we can learn from my mom's story. Bad guys fit no definable profile. So often, so many of us do not, especially when it comes to a woman being involved in the transaction, we don't associate women with with violent crimes. So I hope that you'll just, what's good for one's good for all. Don't live your life in fear, but also, apply your screening just like you do with your fair housing. What's truly good for one is good for everyone. Fight your internal biases on what you think a bad guy looks like. Insist upon an in-person pre-showing buyer consultation. Put a process in place to get the ID. Just make sure you keep if you're getting IDs from people, it's important that we can not only that we are keeping the IDs secure, but that we can articulate, look, I'm doing it for your safety of everyone involved, and keep them secure. Use the internet to research your clients, share your itinerary and your location with loved ones, with your broker, with other agents, just people that will help you and look out for you. I pray that you'll trust your God-given instinct. I hope that you'll think about, make sure that you keep your back to the door. And I hope that you'll remember my mom and remember that next door neighbor, and that if you see something, you will report it to the authorities immediately, that you'll document it, snap a picture, whatever it may be. We always have our phones with us, so just grab and snap a picture. I hope that you'll keep the conversation going. I know that this session's being recorded today, but if you want to email me, if you'd like just these PowerPoint slides, or you want me to do a Zoom for another group of people, I'm always happy to jump on to help. We do have out on our website, which you can see is beverlycarterfoundation.org. If there's one part of that website that I would point you to, there is a training drop down, and underneath training, there is a section for downloadable resources. And so there you'll find a bunch of one-pagers that, as we get back to normal, hey, even now, you can just pull them down, share them with people, and that will be a great way for you to help keep the conversation going. Of course, in the aftermath of losing Mom, we have created the foundation. You, as a real estate agent, are the ones that this nonprofit organization seeks to help through safety education and awareness. And the last thing that I will leave you with is a photograph of my kids. And if you will just allow me to allow this this photograph to be symbolic of you and your career, my kiddos there, as they looked 5 years ago, we took this photo on a run. We put this photo on my mom's Facebook wall. This was taken 1 week to the day before she was taken from us. And if that for sale sign can be representative of your career and everything that you're putting into it, the fact that you're still plugging into your association's training during this awful time says so much about your commitment. But I hope that in some small way, my words have made you more mindful of the people like my kids here, the people on the periphery of your career, your family, your loved ones that so desperately need you to come home safely every day. I can't thank you guys enough for this opportunity. Stay safe, everyone.
Carl, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Super tough to relive that. You're doing your mother proud. You're doing your family proud. And I think all the folks that tuned in today will take those words of thoughtfulness and carry that forward in doing their work. Certainly, we're going to promote our folks to watch this video. And also, too, we know you have other trainings, so we might be calling on you again to join us from Arkansas.
I'd love to.
But again, thank you very much. We appreciate this. Thank you for your courage and your strength. Get through this pandemic. Hopefully you guys aren't going too crazy in the house. Last week when I talked to Carl, when we were trying to iron out the details, he just got back from a run. A little bit of wisdom in there, right? You got to clear the head out. You got to get a little physical activity. So hopefully our folks are doing that as well. So again, Carl, thank you. Folks, tune in this afternoon. We'd love to see you at our town hall. And yes, as Heather just showed, she gave you some love. Philly love. You always have a place here in Philadelphia, Carl, for sure. All right, guys, take care. Have a great day. We'll see you later.
Stay safe, everyone.